Our goal here really is to pull out the key takeaways. How do these fine motor skills actually impact academics, language, even self-control?
And crucially, give you some practical, usable strategies.
Ever really thought about those tiny hand movements young kids make, beyond just grabbing a crayon?
Right. It turns out they're incredibly important. They're actually building the foundation for some really big learning down the road.
Exactly. So if you've ever wondered how to give young learners a strong start for school, well, this deep dive is for you.
We're going to unpack the research and look at these surprising connections between like little finger movements and major learning outcomes.
And we've pulled from quite a range of sources. There's a big 2025 review by Lee and colleagues analyzing 11 studies, which is, pretty comprehensive.
And we've got specific insights on reading from the Journal of Research and Reading, language links from First Language,
A study on self-regulation and writing from Early Childhood Research Quarterly, research on what actually happens in classrooms from the American Journal of Occupational Therapy.
and even a really new 2025 study comparing handwriting and typing, which is fascinating. That's from the Journal of Experimental Child Psychology.
So our goal here really is to pull out the key takeaways. How do these fine motor skills actually impact academics, language, even self-control?
And crucially, give you some practical, usable strategies. Things teachers, therapists, parents, things you can actually do.
Okay, let's dive in.
Mm.
Where do we start? Maybe with the basics, the connection to early academics. Reading and math.
Yeah, good place to start. That 2025 review by Liz and colleagues really sets the stage. Across all those studies, they found really clear links. Stronger fine motor skills generally meant better performance in early reading and math for kids aged, 3 to 10.
That's a pretty wide age range.
It is. And what's interesting is it's not just about the skill itself. It contributes to a child's confidence, their sense of being able to do things in the classroom.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
If you struggle with the physical stuff, it can really knock your confidence overall.
Exactly. And specifically looking at math, the review showed kids with better fine motor skills tended to perform better.
Any particular fine motor skills standing out for math?
Yes, visual motor integration. That's basically coordinating what you see with what your hands do. Think about counting blocks or lining things up.
Okay, so that eye-hand coordination, I can see how that links to math concepts. What about reading?
Well, visual motor integration helps there too. It's needed for tracking text on a line, right?
Yeah.
And for forming letters when you start writing, even just focusing on the page. The review also mentioned fine motor coordination, using small tools, finger dexterity that had a connection to reading too, maybe a bit smaller, but definitely significant.
So that visual motor piece seems really central for both reading and math readiness. Now, you mentioned graphomotor skills earlier from that Journal Research and Reading study. What's the difference?
Right, that's a key distinction. That German study by Sugge and colleagues looked at kindergartners. They found that graphomotor skills, skills specifically related to handwriting, were actually a stronger predictor of early literacy skills than just general fine motor abilities.
Okay, wait. So handwriting-specific skills matter more for learning to read than just, say, being good at threading beads.
That's what this study suggests, yeah. Graphomotor skills are more specialized. They involve things like visual perception, that visual motor coordination again, but also remembering letter shapes, orthographic coding, planning the movements, and even the feel of writing, the kinesthetic feedback.
Wow, okay. That's much more detailed than just hand skills. And this was important even before kids really knew their letters well.
That's the kicker. Even when they controlled for general fine motor skills and cognitive ability, these graph motor skills were still significantly linked to early reading development. It wasn't dependent on knowing the alphabet yet.
That's huge. It suggests that working on these pre-writing skills, the actual mechanics, could really help reading.
Exactly. The researchers basically recommend focusing on developing these graphomotor skills in kindergarten, specifically to support early reading.
Fascinating. Okay, let's shift a bit. What about the connection between fine motor skills and language itself, like spoken language?
Yeah, there's a strong link there, too. Research, like the work by Winter and colleagues in 2024, shows this clearly. Stronger fine motor skills are linked to bigger vocabularies.
Really? Both understanding words and using them?
Yeah, both receptive the words they understand and expressive the words they can actually speak. It's kind of amazing how connected these areas are.
It really is.
Yeah.
You wouldn't necessarily think that playing with Lego helps you talk better.
But the evidence points that way. And it goes further. Dexterity, how well kids handle small objects, that was closely related to their ability to tell stories, structure a narrative orally.
So better hands, better stories.
Sort of, yeah. The thinking is that maybe these fine motor tasks stimulate brain areas that are also involved in language processing. It's like a cross-training effect in the brain.
Interesting theory. Okay, let's tackle writing directly now. Obviously it needs fine motor skills, but also language understanding. And you mentioned self-regulation playing a role.
Absolutely. Writing is tough for young kids, as Chandler and colleagues pointed out. They're juggling, developing hand skills, and trying to figure out written language. It's a heavy cognitive load.
Right.
And that's where self-regulation becomes critical.
Define that for us in this context. What does self-regulation look like here?
It's about managing yourself to get the task done. Things like paying attention, shifting focus appropriately, using working memory, controlling impulses. Basically, planning and directing your actions towards the goal of writing something.
Got it. So how does that interact with fine motor skills when kids are writing?
Well, the study on preschoolers found it's kind of a dynamic relationship.
Hmm.
At the start of the year, self-regulation was really important for kids who already had good fine motor skills, but only when the writing task was hard.
Okay, so good hands weren't enough if they couldn't focus on a challenging task.
Precisely. But then later in the year, the picture changed a bit. Self-regulation mattered for kids with weaker fine motor skills on simpler tasks. And it also mattered for kids with stronger fine motor skills when they tackled the more complex tasks again.
That sounds complex. What's the main takeaway message there?
The key thing is that strengths in one area can sometimes help make up for weaknesses in another. Good self-regulation might help a child with weaker hands get through an easier task, or good hand skills might help a child push through a harder task if their focus is okay. It depends on the task demands.
That's really practical insight for teachers dealing with struggling writers.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk technology. That 2025 study comparing handwriting and typing, what did it find?
Ah, yes. Ibai Barriaga and colleagues, really interesting stuff. They taught pre-reading kindergartners letters and made up words using different methods. Handwriting copy, tracing, typing different fonts, typing one font.
And the results?
Pretty clear cut, actually. The kids who practiced handwriting, either copying or tracing, did significantly better on reading and spelling tasks afterwards compared to the kids who only typed.
Wow. So handwriting really gave them an edge. What specific advantages did they see?
Well, handwriting seemed to help them remember both the letter shapes and the sounds better. Typing just didn't forge that same strong letter-sound connection, even with varied fonts.
Interesting.
And copying by hand was actually better than tracing, especially for remembering words and being able to write them later. So overall, handwriting boosted letter recognition, word reading, spelling, writing from memory, pretty much across the board for early literacy.
So it's the physical act of forming the letters that seems to lock it in.
That seems to be the idea. The researchers talk about how handwriting involves motor planning, fine motor control, paying close attention to detail. All these things seem to create stronger neural pathways for literacy. Brain scans even show more brain activation during handwriting compared to typing. It's more multisensory.
It sounds like it builds a more robust foundation.
It does. It supports both knowing the alphabet, the letter-sound links, and orthographic knowledge recognizing patterns and words visually. That strong start is so important.
Definitely makes a strong case for keeping handwriting prominent in early grades. Okay, shifting again what's actually happening in elementary classrooms regarding fine motor time.
Right. The Karamia study from 2020 looked at that. They observed kids in elementary school and found they spend a lot of their day doing fine motor activities, somewhere between like 37% and over 60%.
That's a huge amount of time. What are they doing?
Well, paper and pencil tasks took up more time as kids got older, moving from K to fourth grade.
Makes sense. More writing, worksheets.
Exactly. And on the flip side, time spent on things like playing with blocks or other manipulatives tended to decrease over those years.
Okay. What about actual handwriting practice time?
That ranged from about 3% to maybe 18% of the day. The researchers noted this might actually be less than in the past, suggesting maybe less dedicated practice time in schools now.
That's concerning given the benefits we just discussed. How much tech use did they see?
Technology use was somewhere between 3% and 14% across the grades they looked at. But an interesting point was how much fine motor skill use happened during transitions.
Transitions, like between classes.
Yeah, or just getting materials out, packing bags, that kind of thing. That took up around 19% to 23% of the day and relied heavily on fine motor skills.
So these skills are needed constantly, not just for specific fine motor tasks. And did the overall demand increase with age?
Yes, definitely. The demands on fine motor skills clearly went up as kids progressed through elementary school.
Which really highlights that kids struggling with these skills might need ongoing support throughout the day, right? Not just during writing time.
Exactly. And maybe need that extra handwriting practice outside of school hours if they aren't getting as much during the day.
It's been such a clear picture of how integral these skills are. Okay, let's get to the actionable stuff. Based on all this, what can people actually do? Let's start with teachers in the classroom.
Right. Teachers can do so much. First off, lots of daily hands-on play. Building toys, art stuff, puzzles, little objects, anything that builds hand strength and coordination.
Simple but effective. What else?
Encourage working on vertical surfaces. Writing or drawing on an easel or chalkboard helps build shoulder and wrist stability, which is key for pencil control.
Oh, that's a good tip.
Finger plays and songs, they're fun and they really develop dexterity and control. Also, activities where kids copy shapes and patterns tracing. Drawing simple forms builds that visual motor integration we talked about.
Makes sense.
Add fine motor tools to play centers, things like tweezers, tongs, stamps, Play-Doh. It sneaks the practice into playtime. Keep early writing tasks short and sweet to avoid overwhelm.
Good point. Avoid burnout.
Use manipulatives in math blocks, beads, counters. It links fine motor work with number concepts. And definitely schedule regular handwriting practice, especially in early grades.
And link it to phonics.
Yes. Combining handwriting practice with learning letter sounds reinforces those connections really well. And maybe hold off on introducing typing too early. Let the handwriting foundation get solid first.
Great list for teachers. What about therapists, OTs, PTs, SLPs?
For therapists, a key thing is to really integrate handwriting into literacy goals. Don't see them as separate things.
Okay.
Prioritize hand copying over just tracing when possible, as the research suggests it's better for memory and recall.
Right, the copying study.
And a huge role is supporting teachers. Share these strategies. Give them ideas for reinforcing skills throughout the entire school day, not just in isolated sessions. Collaboration is key.
Absolutely. Okay, last group. What can parents do at home?
Parents play a massive role. Provide tons of opportunities for that hands-on play. We mentioned blocks, art, puzzles, beads, Play-Doh.
Keep those little hands busy.
Yep. Maybe set the little writing spot paper, crayons, pencils, maybe some letter magnets or games readily available. Encourage writing in everyday life. Helping write the grocery list, labeling toys, writing thank you notes. Make it functional. Make it fun, too. Write nen, shaving cream, use finger paints. Get creative.
Love that. Makes it less of a chore.
Encourage drawing and then having them tell you about their picture. That hits both motor skills and language skills. Support independence with self-care tasks, buttons, zippers, opening lunch containers. That builds coordination and confidence.
Good practical life skills, too.
And finally, try to balance screen time. Make sure there's plenty of time for active, hands-on play and learning away from devices.
So really, it boils down to providing consistent, varied opportunities for kids to use their hands actively.
Exactly. These fine motor skills, they're not just nice to have. They are truly foundational. They impact reading, math, language, self-regulation, so many critical areas.
It's really powerful when you think about it, how these seemingly small activities, these little hand movements, can have such a huge lasting effect on a child's whole learning path.
It definitely gives you a new appreciation for things like playing with Play-Doh or practicing letter shapes, doesn't it? Makes you think about what small changes you could make.
Absolutely. A lot to consider there for anyone working with or raising young children.
And if you want to explore this further, definitely check out your therapy source. They have a ton more research summaries, practical tools, printables, lots of resources on fine motor skills and child development.